Well, one sector that is getting hit very hard today is cruise lines. A lot of these cruise line names are tumbling. Now, the U.S. State Department now recommending that Americans avoid cruise ships to contain the spread of the coronavirus. This comes as we are now getting new pictures of the Grand Princess ship. It is expected to begin unloading passengers today at the port of Oakland in California. At least 21 passengers on that ship have tested positive for the virus. Now, we have Wedbush leisure analyst James Hardiman. He joins us now. And James, I know back at the end of February, you took a look at a lot of the big three cruise line names, lowered your expectations then. The virus has continued to spread since. What are you expecting to see now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. Obviously, yesterday's news that the State Department was suggesting that people avoid cruise lines. I mean, I don't think most of the people that you know or I know were planning on taking a cruise, but I think that's a big step. That is a meaningful step for the industry that's never really seen anything to that level. And so I think you're going to see bookings down dramatically. The question is, how long does that last? But I think, for some time, I think it was safe to say that 2020 was going to be an extremely challenged year. I think it's probably safe to say that 2021 is going to be impacted. I think the big question for investors that consider this space is, with all of this negative press, what is this doing to the long-term prospects of the industry as people are making those negative associations with the cruise industry? I still have confidence that this is going to be an industry that recovers and ultimately prospers in the long term, but how long that takes is anybody's guess.
James, do you think, how well do you think cruise lines and some of the other leisure stocks that you cover are equipped to deal with the demand shock that they are experiencing right now?
Well, to a large degree, that's a question of, are their balance sheets prepared to withstand extended bookings declines? And I think they're much better equipped than they would have been, prior to the last recession. These companies, if I think about Carnival, Royal, and Norwegian, you're looking at about anywhere between 2 and 3.5 times leverage, so debt to EBITDA. And that's a pretty good position. Now, it can't last forever, and I don't want to say that they're completely safe. But you're beginning to see companies such as Norwegian this morning who are bolstering up those balance sheets. So they just closed on a $675 million credit agreement, which gets their total liquidity availability up north of $1.5 billion. I think they're preparing for a long winter.
James, what about the relaxation of cancellation policies across the various cruise ship companies? We've heard that come out over the last several days. What kind of impact will that have? How significant, I guess, to these companies' bottom lines?
Well, I think it's going to hurt their bottom lines, but I think it's 100% the right move. Previously, if the cruise wasn't actually canceled, even if it was pretty evident that a whole lot of people would cancel, they were going to be responsible for any of their deposits that had been paid to that point. And more often than not, 100% of the cruise fares are due, a month out, 2 months out. At this point, you've got, if you cancel within 3 days of when the cruise is scheduled to set sail, you're not going to get your money back. You're going to get credit generally towards a future sailing. But I think that's a big step forward, and I think it's what all of the doctors and scientists are saying is the right thing to do in many instances.
Pence met on Saturday with various cruise executives just talking about the challenges, obviously, that a lot of these companies are facing right now. Do you have any information just in terms of what was discussed or what was likely to be discussed at that meeting?
I don't, unfortunately. I've inquired about that, haven't had a whole lot of success. My guess is that, from the government's perspective, they encourage the cruise companies, again, to not push people unduly into taking a cruise that from a health perspective may not be a good idea. My guess from the cruise executive's perspective is to allow them to do what they do and don't outright cancel these cruises, don't ultimately take away their livelihood. And at least so far, we've seen that from both sides.
James, what about the impact on theme parks? Because it falls into the category of crowded places. People are nervous to go to crowded places right now, and they could abandon trips that they've had planned in the short term.
Absolutely, and it's a group that's been hit hard, albeit not nearly as hard as the cruise space, who's obviously going through their worst nightmare right in the middle of the media, watching everything unfold on the nightly news. But I do think that the theme park industry is certainly at risk. Now, the good news, as I think about the pure play theme park companies, so Six Flags and Cedar Fair in particular, they've got the calendar on their side a little bit. For the most part, those regional parks don't open until sometime April, May timeframe. So they've got a little bit of a buffer here. But if I think about the destination theme parks, SeaWorld obviously has some parks in Orlando and in Southern California. And then, the big ones, Disney and Universal. Now, the park business is a small part of what they do. But fundamentally, they've got to be seeing it right now. I think if you ask your friends, if you ask your colleagues, people that were thinking about, going to an amusement park for their kids' spring break, going to Orlando, a lot of them are reconsidering that now, right now. How many people pull the trigger on canceling versus pushing forward? Again, it's a daily basis that I think people are wrestling with that decision. But I got to think it's having an impact at this point.
James Hardiman of Wedbush, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.